Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 23rd of September. I'm Kevin Hoare, your host, and we are very pleased to have with us tonight one of our regular state representative guests on Representative E. Werner Reschke. Um, Remind me of your district. I should know it off. I think is it District 1? No,
Yeah,
that's Court, Boyce.
that's Court Boyce. Yes. Now I'm 55. That's how I remember. So
Double nickel. That's right.
double nickel, two hands with all the digits. Yeah.
And I know you kind of have a landlocked area of um, uh, southeastern Oregon, and it's
Yeah,
it,
it's South Central and Central Oregon. So it goes from the border of Highway 97 all the way up to Bend.
got it.
So most parts in between, and mostly east of Highway 97 till you get above Klamath Falls, and it kind of breaks out and encompasses Crater Lake, and then all of northern Klamath County, all of southern Deschutes County, and around the east side of Deschutes County up to Crook County. So 148 miles north south, 70 miles east west.
Wow, it's a it's a nice sized district, but it's also a microcosm of all the things Democrats just don't care about in this state. I think that's maybe one way.
Including yours truly, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Um, but the last couple of weeks have been like tomorrow will only be 2 weeks since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and everybody, it even though it's like a national story, I think it's got roots. It's definitely got legs. It's definitely impacted everyone, and in a way that I do believe a lot of people are surprised at. Um, how much of an impact it's
yeah,
had. I mean, who would have thought that we would be having in a stadium of 100,000 people a memorial for Charlie Kirk, attended by the president, the vice president, Adele and Celine Dion made tribute videos to him. Um, I it's a cultural phenomena. It reminds me a little bit, but on a different scale. Do you remember when Princess Diana died in
yeah,
that car crash?
yeah.
And
Mhm.
it struck me when I was watching the Adele video. It reminded me of the song that Elton John sang when he took that song that was about Marilyn Monroe, but he
Right,
made it about Princess Diana and
right.
sang it. And it was interesting because the establishment, the Queen, just everybody didn't quite get it. It touched people
Yep.
on an emotional level. And I think there's obviously lots of people who still don't get it because they're saying insane stuff on social media and publicly. And I know social media didn't exist in 1990, what, 6 or
Six or
7,
seven. Seven, I think it was seven. Yeah.
but it's insane. People are literally saying, "Good, he got murdered," or he kind of deserved it, or it's really his fault. Blaming the victim, and that's the most benign comments that we're getting. We're also getting like in Portland, Antifa is posting stuff that's like there was one person a rioter in Portland who just posted a video of him shooting up pictures of Andy Ngo and Charlie Kirk. And it's just, and then today, interestingly enough, we had the sentencing of the second attempted assassination of Trump. And the guy was a bizarre guy. He had a fool for a client as far as um, uh, he defended himself in a murder case, or attempted murder case, and then he then took a pen and tried to stab himself in the neck to kill himself because he wanted to be a martyr. Uh, there is something sick and wrong right now, but it's finally been exposed, hasn't it? And maybe this is the beginning of our society coming to grips with all this and changing it direction.
Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy world we live in. I think the Charlie Kirk assassination. I think it is as big as Diana. I think it is as big as RFK, and I think it's probably as big as Martin Luther King Jr. It's a once in a lifetime or once in a generation, certainly, type of assassination that I liken to a dropping a big rock in the middle of a pond that's calm, and just every shoreline is hit with the effects of that.
Yeah.
And there's no place you can be on earth and not have heard about this or know about this, unless you're, I guess, under a rock. But it's not great. And what people are saying on social media, either encouraging it or praising it, or just saying, well, he deserved it for the things he said. Evil is the shedding of innocent blood. Greater evil is the justification and enablement of such.
Yeah.
And when people do that, they are committing greater evil, because all it does is embolden somebody else to do it. And that is certainly what we do not want to have happen. I mean, Charlie Kirk was a man who, wise beyond his years, knowledgeable way beyond his years. They say if I could do 1/10 of what he did in my lifetime, it will be a big success.
Yeah.
The guy was phenomenal, and he left a legacy that is not going to just die with his body, but is going to, I think, explode. And I think we're already seeing that with the number of chapters being requested at Turning Point USA. And I think they would have gotten there, but not this quickly. And so I think there has been if you want to call it a hockey stick, as far as awareness of the organization, wanting to be part of the organization, wanting to extend what he does. And I saw the other day, because the question was, well, who's going to fill in for Charlie now that Charlie's gone? Who's going to go on campus? And the answer is not one person. The answer is multiple people have signed up. Glenn Beck, and even Rob Schneider with, I can't remember who he's put, I think with Robert Kennedy. They're paired together to go somewhere to a campus. Wow. And it's an amazing, and you've just seen that on his show the last 2 weeks. There's been people that have not just filled in for him, but flown to Phoenix to do the show in Phoenix, as opposed to from their own studio. And I think that is fascinating and amazing. I think it's just going to be, everybody's going to pick up their shovel now and start digging, as opposed to just Charlie.
That's the thing. I think that it's having the opposite effect, certainly of what the shooter was expecting to do, which is that it's woken everybody up to the need for peaceful but vigorous dialogue.
Right.
And maybe of all places, the places that should be the most possible, the most likely place that you could have these dialogues is on a place of higher learning on a college campus, where you're supposed to take the battle of ideas.
True.
And I think maybe this is the beginning of retaking campuses for what they should be, which is the battle of ideas, not the indoctrination of the left, which it clearly has done that. I've spoken to so many people that are frustrated their kids go to a college, common sense, even conservative values. They come back and they feel like they resent their parents, and they hate the country, and they think all this stuff about the country that's actually not true, but it's Marxism.
Yep. And you might see me waving my hand, and it's not at you. I'm not making fun of you. There is a fly who has a love affair with me apparently today. So did not get it. And so it is buzzing the tower often. So apologize for the waving incessantly, but you're right. I think college campuses, and Charlie knew this, college campuses is where the rubber meets the road. And that is, the whole idea of university is one uni, meaning coming together with diverse thoughts and ideas. And this has sparked the whole idea, even with Jimmy Kimmel, about what's free speech. And in my view, free speech is not saying whatever you want, whenever you want, with no consequences. Free speech is actually entering in dialogue, expressing opinions in search of the truth. So the
Yeah.
reason the university exists is so you bring a bunch of people together with diverse ideas and you debate and you argue and you prove and you counterprove and you get, but the goal is always to find truth.
The
And
search
it's
for
not to
truth.
tear
Yeah.
down, it's not to rip apart the person, it's to rip apart maybe the idea because it's a bad idea or it leads away from truth. But the goal is always to find truth. And that's what free speech, the purpose is for, is to find truth. And so when you have people saying, oh, well, I can say whatever I want and there should be no consequences. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel is a great example because Jimmy Kimmel did this on the public airways, which is regulated by the FCC. The public airways are owned by us, the people. The government then licenses that to a particular entity for a fee in order for the public good.
Good to be
When
served.
you are not doing the public good with those airwaves, the FCC has every right to come in. If Jimmy Kimmel had said this at a Vegas nightclub or in a comedy store or in his backyard or even at a rally at a university, that's one thing. But he said it on the public airwaves. And that's why it has a whole different level of what's being scrutinized here. And I think that's missed often in that discussion.
But what's interesting about that one is they all started claiming that the FCC actually had forced him to be fired, but that's actually not what happened, which
No.
is infuriating because this was the free market. There are
Yep.
the two largest owners of local television stations in the United States, Nexstar and
Sinclair.
Sinclair.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't, our viewers don't want to have this stuff.
Right. Or we don't
And
want our
so-
viewers to see this. Yeah, exactly.
Because what Jimmy Kimmel did is he didn't just like tell a joke because it wasn't funny. And it wasn't
No.
even trying to be funny. He literally was
Yes.
pandering to
He was giving
the
cover
worst.
for the assassin.
Yes, and he actually specifically made a incendiary, um, uh, uh, provably and knowingly false claim about
Yep.
the assassin, which, frankly, if a bunch of people believed him and
Yes.
acted upon that, would be incitement to riot potentially. Because if you know you're telling somebody something that's false and you are trying to create some sort of public reaction, that's not serving the public good if you are
Right.
trying to incite violence. And certainly if you are promoting blatant falsehoods. Now, do you have the right under free speech to tell falsehoods? Yes, you do. You do, actually. You just don't have the right to do it on the public airwaves. And you don't have the right to someone else's resources to transmit that to as many people as possible, such as Nexstar and Sinclair. You don't have that. That's not a right. Any more than I have a right to go. I need to go to the store, so I have a right to take your car and go do it because I'm super hungry. You know, I mean, that's
Right.
just that dumb. And at the same time, you know, they lie about the president and the administration's role in this. And I just saw Congresswoman Val Hoyle. She did a rant talking about free speech and quoting all of these, you know, Oscar Wilde and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was just rife with complete falsehoods about the entire situation and claiming that it's really Republicans that are involved in canceling people. And
Right.
you know,
My view on free speech might be a little different than others, or I'm still working through it, and probably will have my thesis completed just before I pass from this earth.
well, then a lifetime of experience will be behind it. We'll
Right,
all be
but-
eagerly
but-
awaiting it, just not eagerly awaiting your passing. Okay, so
if free speech is narrow in its scope, it's in the political sphere, right? And that's what the founders wanted. They wanted not the government to censor. And we just found out that Joe Biden and his administration, Google admitted they were pressuring Google to censor people.
they were.
And Dr. Robert Malone bemoaned, well, that's fantastic that came out now, but in 2022, I couldn't defend myself. So how has my reputation been tarnished and ruined? And I lost friends because I couldn't respond because I was being censored by the government. That's a problem with free speech, not
Yeah.
what happened to Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah. And, YouTube, so there is a corner that's been turned. Like YouTube is now saying they're going to let users that were booted for repeated violations of the COVID statements and election
Right.
policies, they're going to let them rejoin. That's overdue. But I guess
Long
that's
overdue.
probably to assuage the sensitivity on the news that they, in fact, on behalf, because YouTube's owned by Google, did
Yep.
censor on behalf of the Biden administration. And the Biden administration used these entities as extensions of the government through coercion, right?
Correct.
Nextar and Sinclair plainly saw what Jimmy Kimmel said and said, that is actually something that our viewers don't want to see.
Right.
And they have to, and if they're wrong, their viewers won't watch their stations, And so Jimmy Kimmel, by the way, and the other guy that they keep claiming is being censored, even though he was actually just too expensive for is it CBS?
Yes.
You know who I'm talking
Colbert,
about?
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen
Yeah.
Colbert. So I mean, these guys are bad
And
business.
their ratings were terrible. I mean, it's almost that the networks or these entities were looking for an excuse and they found one.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than saying, and I don't know why ABC doesn't just take the hint. I mean, if you go on YouTube or you go on Instagram, my Instagram feed is just full of comedians. I don't know why. I guess I need to
There's a
laugh
lot
and
of good
Instagram
ones.
needs to know it. And there are some really funny people out there.
Yeah.
Why not pick up 8 of them and say, okay, you get one night, you get one night, you get one night. We'll just rotate through you, and maybe we find one that we really like, or we'll just continue this. But we want 5 minutes of funny at the beginning of the show, and then you do an interview, and that's pretty simple to do. We'll get you set up to do that, but we need 5 minutes of funny. And with Kimmel, you weren't getting that. With Colbert, you weren't getting that. You were getting some illusion of comedy with political commentary, really, as the content that you were getting, and it wasn't fair and it wasn't unbalanced and it was not even funny. I mean, it wasn't even entertaining. So
Yeah.
I don't know why these networks, if they want to continue that format, which may be a bygone format, who knows? But that's what I'd do if I was a network executive. Say, give that to me. I'm going to go find 10 comedians. We're going to make late night TV funny and entertaining again, so that when people go to bed, they'll have a smile on their face.
And they've lost the young demographic that has been the backbone of not only of these comedy shows, but that's been the backbone of consumerism, which is where the most lucrative commercial returns come from. And these guys are super expensive. Kimmel and Colbert get paid tens of millions of dollars per year in these contracts,
to be not funny.
And they've seen the collapse in their audience. So you know what happens? I mean, those are businesses, not charities. They don't have to give money to Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert just because woke people demand it.
There's a clip out there of Johnny Carson, and he's being interviewed, and all you see is him. But the question has to do with, why didn't he ever get political when he was on TV? And he said, well, that wasn't my job and my role. And he says, when you start going down that path, he goes, my job was to entertain.
Yeah.
And he says, when you go down the road of using that platform for political statements, all of a sudden you think you're more mighty than you probably are. And you're more intelligent than you probably are, because that's not what the platform was built upon. The platform was built upon your entertainment value, not your political acumen. And it's fascinating. That's why he never went there. And, if there was a bad day, whether it was 9/11 or it was even in 1993, I think the World Trade Centers were bombed in the garage. And there were several other bad days politically during his run from the 70s on.
Jay Leno and
even Jay Leno. They made sure that they acknowledged that was there, but we're gonna laugh right now. There's time to deal with that. But this is a time to be entertained, and that's what I'm going to do. And I think the latest group just has forgotten that or left that behind, because I don't think Jimmy Kimmel's been funny for a number of years.
No, and what's interesting too is that the profile of the smug, humorless, leftist progressive that has really become, that's what these guys are. And that's
Yeah.
kind of why they're not,
They're angry. They're bitter.
they're angry and bitter, and they look down on at
Yeah.
least half the nation and maybe a good percentage of their own viewers.
Yeah.
And so they say stuff that sounds like they're actually making fun of the other half of the country. And Jimmy Kimmel himself said, "You know what? If half my viewers don't like my, I don't care. They don't have
Right.
to watch." Well, guess what? They're not.
Yes, they didn't watch. They took his advice.
That's
Right.
right.
And to contrast that back to Charlie Kirk, there was a story told about him in the White House that he was meeting with the president. It came out and he saw a staffer having a bad day and he stopped and he prayed with him. Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk treated everyone as a human. He treated everybody. I'm sure that if you went interviewed on the set, that Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert didn't treat their staffers and the people that quote serve them as anything but servants.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure they culled their staffs of anybody who might have views
Yes.
anywhere close to Charlie Kirk. So,
Right. Right. Exactly.
that's the thing. It's like that, who's canceling what and whom. There is something really interesting that has developed, I think. I would call it the Kirk effect. I'm going to mention one thing that I think does matter. President Trump signed an order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization
Yes.
because they are, because they're committing acts of terror.
Right.
And they're not just like, doing a little graffiti or beating up a cop. They're trying to affect the entire society
Right.
to quash opposition and terrorize people into really complying with their point of view. And for the longest time, I just said, well, they're the militant wing of the Democrat Party. And you
Yep.
can tell when you said the worst thing isn't the people who commit these acts, it's the people who just excuse and explain away and
Right.
justify those acts.
Right.
That's been happening with Antifa, the mostly peaceful protesters of Antifa,
Right.
burning
As the
cities.
fires burn in the background. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right, shining lasers in the light and throwing
Yeah.
concrete pieces of concrete at
And they're
at
they're they're
police officers.
doxing federal workers who are ICE workers. They're doxing them and their families so they can be harassed and harmed. It's really bad. And Antifa, this is know your history because Antifa is not new. Antifa comes back from the 1930s when
Yes.
the communists in Germany under the Weimar Republic were battling with the Nazis. And
Yes.
so you had the Nazis, the fascists, and you had the Antifa. And those were, quote, the only, but they were both violent and they both wanted authoritarian rule and control. The Antifa, the anti fascists, lost that battle.
They did.
But their positioning, if you're not for us, if you're not against fascism, and we could determine what fascism is, then you are a fascist. And I like to say I'm against fascism. I'm against communism and Antifa. I'm for liberty, prosperity, limited government, and all the good, the true, the beautiful. I'm for those things. So there's not just these two ways, and you have to understand that that's their trick. We're Antifa, and if you're not against, you're not against fascism. Oh, well, then you must be a fascist. It's like,
Yeah.
you're not a Cowboys fan. Oh, well, then you must be a Redskins fan. No, I'm not a Redskin or what do you call it? The Commanders fan. You're a Commanders fan. I'm not a Commanders fan. I'm a Rams fan. There's a lot of other ways to be. It's not just two choices.
Well, and actually, there wasn't a hair of difference in many respects between the fascists and the communists in Germany. Neither one of them was in favor of a free democratic elected officials in a republic with inalienable rights.
They're both leftist organizations. They are both leftists, and the communists positioned them as being on the right wing. That was the lie that they kept telling, and it's been in our textbooks from whatever is. If you look at a political spectrum, on the left is Marxism and communism, and then you work your way to kind of liberty, and then way over here is fascism on the right. No, they're both far left ideologies.
They're for government control and deciding whether you have rights or not based on their criteria.
Right. Or whether you get to speak or not, or whether you get to go to church or not, or whether you get to have your job or not, or whether yeah, go to a certain school or not,
And
etc.
if you have the better argument, then they come down on you with violence. Does that
Right.
sound familiar? Yes. That's
Yes.
what
Yeah.
happened to Charlie Kirk. And so the better we are, a society governed by the better arguments get a chance, and
Yes.
people get to hear it, and the better arguments get to win at some point. And you can't force people to accept those arguments. They have to accept them themselves.
Right.
That's a fundamentally free society. And so Antifa being designated as a terrorist organization, I think, is the beginning of the end of this phase of, because fascism has turned into what a few years ago, they used racism for.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go back 5 years and everybody who disagreed with you was a racist.
Racist. Yeah.
Now everybody who disagrees with you is a fascist. And all of it was done to justify social chaos and breakdown and violence. And I think there's a greater rebellion happening too. First of all, there's been a surge of people going to churches that said,
That's
"I was
great.
never even thinking about it, and you know what? I'm going to do it now."
Good.
And the churches are almost dumbfounded because there's just so many people showing up. They're
Right.
like, "Where do we put these people?"
Why are they here, and where do we put them? Exactly. Right. No, it's a good problem to have. Oz Guinness, who's an Englishman who's a philosopher and also an English scholar, he describes liberty as a triangle, and so liberty is made of 3 points. The top point is individual freedom, and that can only work when you have a moral society. So you have to have virtue. That's the second point down in the kind of one of the corners. You have individual liberty, you have virtue, but to create virtue, you have to have religious organizations that are free to teach virtue, to have liberty. And you take away any one of those, you remove religious organizations from the public square, all of a sudden you have a less virtuous people. When you have a less virtuous people, all of a sudden you become less free.
Yeah, because eventually someone says, "You know what? We sure are tired of having these people tell us that there's a God. They must shut up. So let's
Right.
finish them off," and that's how the society breaks down. It is the debate,
We
the
get the
public,
lie,
free, open
the lie
debate of
of
what
the
virtue is.
we get the lie of separation of church and state, and this one it doesn't take very long. Google Thomas Jefferson's response to the Danbury Baptists. It's about 1 page long, and in there you will read that the Danbury Baptists, their problem was they were worried about Methodists taking over the government and banning their practice of baptism, and so Thomas Jefferson basically said, no, don't worry about it. The First Amendment will protect you, even though the state may try to do something. The First Amendment protects you in our federalist system, and that we have a wall of separation from church and state. And what he was saying is the state cannot interfere in church matters. He never said and never meant that the church should not be involved in state matters. Matter of fact, 2 days later, he went to church in the Capitol building. So if he believed in the separation of church and state like leftists say he did, then why would he go to a government building to worship God? 2 days later, after he wrote that famous phrase. It's been a phrase that's been misused and misunderstood. And really, we need virtuous people in office. We need virtuous people in government. We need virtue in our society. That's what enables liberty. When you lose virtue, you lose liberty, because all of a sudden you have all sorts of chaos breaking out and people clamor, help us, government. And government says, oh, we'll help you. But we're
Government, I think we'll make a good God.
We're going to need some of that. We're going to need some of that money you got in your back pocket. We're going to need some more, because we'll calm the chaos kind of, but we're going to do it the only way a government can, through authoritarian rule.
Well, plus they'll create an unending need for government, which is the institutionalization of that very situation. By the way, I think we just came up with something I've never heard anybody say, but I believe that the separation of church and state they've gone beyond that, because now they've said that there has to be a separation between virtue and state.
Yes.
And so the separation of virtue and state is clearly not good for society.
No.
And if people were to think of it that way, realizing that churches are a way to help supply people with information about what virtue is or should be, and that we're all free to debate what that is,
Right.
and that the government can't stop us from doing that and acting upon that in a peaceful way that doesn't violate other people's rights. That sounds to me like a great way for a new generation of people who watch a Charlie Kirk debate on YouTube now to say, you know what, actually, we do need people talking like that and talking to people who disagree with them, because that is going to actually be how ideas become refined and adopted and then prevail, is through that process of people actually getting to and shutting out people like Charlie Kirk from a college campus is anathema to that campus and its purpose, if it's a real one.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is the competition of ideas, and we can see that just in the competition of what made America great in the economics, right? So somebody builds a car, Ford, they build a manufacturing plant, somebody else decides to build a different manufacturing plant, and on we go. And now we have all these car companies around the world competing for your dollar. And I can guarantee you the car that you'd buy in 2025 is quite a bit better than the one in 1913, right? Because of competition. And so apply that same idea, that concept of competition to ideas.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what the founders struggled with. That's what they were wrestling with. How do we build this government? How do we allow a government to allow individual liberty without allowing chaos? And I think they came up with the Federalist system that was good. And if we would move back to the 18 enumerated powers in the Constitution and not bastardize the idea of birthright citizenship, or get rid of the 16th and 17th Amendments, which are awful. And I think the other thing is the misuse of the phrase general welfare opens the federal government up to things that it should never be doing. If we need a Department of Environmental Quality, it shouldn't be at the federal level, it should be at the state level. And matter of fact, we have them at the state level. So now we have duplication of services. We have the federal level and we have the state level. And the state basically implements what the feds say, although we can do our own thing, and it's just obnoxious. If a state wants to do that, great. And if you think this is awful, then you move to a state that doesn't have that or doesn't have it in that manner. But there are a lot of things and you could talk about Department of Education and on. We can go through the alphabet of federal agencies, but it's what my dad would say, not good.
Well, I want to come back to that point you just made here in a minute, because that leads us into some of the things that are happening in Oregon and its relationship with the federal government, which is having an impact. But before I do that, I did want to mention one other thing of the Charlie Kirk effect, which is also part of it is the ability of voters to have an impact on deciding who governs them,
yes,
who they give the consent to govern them for temporary periods of time. And the Charlie Kirk effect is apparently there's been a massive surge in Republican voter registration, which has got to be an absolute nightmare for Democrats who know how many races were so close in 2024, and they were already about nationally, they were about 4 to 4.5 million down from where they were, because between 2024 and 2020, Republicans gained 2.5 million, and Democrats lost somewhere in the same neighborhood, about 2 to 2.5 million of voters, and it contributed to President Trump winning the popular vote. It also contributed to razor thin margins that went the other way in 2024 than it did in 2020 in the presidential race. And we know that has an even more of an impact at the local level. There was the Tracy Kramer race, which I think was only 150 votes or something in the end.
Yep.
That's a state legislative race, by the way, in the Salem area.
It was not great. I think that, that Charlie's impact was scaring the left. And as his wife, Erica, said, you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Because in 2024, from 2020, baby boomers, moved 2% to the left, voted for Kamala. However, Gen Xers moved, no, not Gen Xers, but Gen Z moved 13 points to the right. That's a dramatic shift. And I don't think that's done, because the problem is the world that the boomers created and that millennials uphold and support is a world where you can't afford a house.
Yeah.
The average, I think the median age of purchasing a house is like now 49 years old or something obnoxious like that. Yeah. Well, you're 49 years old and you want to take on a 30-year mortgage. That means you're going to be in debt until you're 79 years old. That's not a good proposition. And so, and part of that's going to be in your retirement years. So good luck with that. So it's this world that they've created is not, it provides very little hope for young people and Gen Z, and I would say I think it's Gen A after. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what Charlie was doing is saying, yeah, it's broken. Yeah, it's wrong. And here's how you fix it. Let's tear down these bad ideas and let's go back to our founding, the way our founders envisioned government, and get government out of the things and have it do specific things, do them well, but leave you alone and give you an opportunity to get an education, but it doesn't have to be in a college. And Charlie actually said that he only believed that 5% of Americans should go to college, right? He said the other 95% should just start a business or start a family or go to work or join a trade school or do something else. And we have, I think, 50% of young adults end up going to college instead of 5%. So we're 10x over. And you can see the effect is that we end up with people that are just basically indoctrinated while they're away from their parents.
And they don't necessarily have skills that they need.
No.
There was an article I just saw today. I don't have it handy to post, but Jay Powell, who's the Fed chair, he said, I want to make something clear. There's things we can affect at the Federal Reserve, like whether interest rates are going up or down, and they certainly are affecting the cost of housing right now. Sure. And we can debate whether he's doing the right thing or not. I think he should probably lower them a bit more, but we'll see. However, he said the problem right now is that many people are entering the workforce without any meaningful skills.
Yeah.
And many of those people are actually coming out of colleges where they studied stuff that has actually nothing to do with the needs in the job marketplace.
Right.
So they're coming out and they're behind the minute they come in. And he said, I can see in the employment numbers today that those people are struggling. And one thing the Federal Reserve cannot do, the Federal Reserve cannot fix the education system. And if there's any place in the country that is in severe need of having its education system even come close to the amount of money spent and the expectations we should have, it's got to be the state of Oregon.
Yeah, we're not in great shape there. And a couple things. One is you talk about not having a skilled workforce or not having people come out. Part of the problem is we're not teaching teenagers and younger how to work. And the reason we aren't is
work
because
ethic, basically.
Their skill set is here and the minimum wage is up here, right? So your ability to do something is worth $7 an hour to my business, but the law says I have to pay you $15 an hour. So maybe I'll hire you, but really, if it was only if I could pay you all $7, I'd hire 3 people to do that work, or 4 people to do that work, or 2.
They're not worth $25 an hour in terms of revenue they bring to the business, right?
Right. And when I'm paying you $15 an hour and you're only worth 7, then I'm subsidizing $7 an hour, and I'm actually losing money in this deal. So the minimum wage has a great effect in letting young people enter the workforce and learn those skills of showing up on time, listening to instructions, following instructions, conflict resolution in the workplace, how to get ahead, how to advance by doing good work. All those things are lost. And so we just cut people off from being able to do that and say, nope, it's $15 an hour. And so businesses are going, oh my goodness. And then the other thing with minimum wage is nobody wants to work at minimum wage, right? I don't want $15 an hour. I want $20 an hour because I'm better than minimum wage. So I think, right? And so now you have this incredible problem in the workforce. But I think Powell is correct. I mean, the Department of Education here in Oregon has grown exponentially over the last 10 years, while the student population continues to hover about the same or drop. And I fail to see why we should be adding more bureaucrats to push paper around and to require things of school districts when we don't have any more students.
Well, and then we've got a bunch of places in the state, in particular in Multnomah County, Portland metro area, the school district I happen to know about, where they're building these education palaces. Literally,
Yes.
They're spending a couple $1 billion on upgrading and renovating and rebuilding a handful of high schools and middle schools that will, when they are finally done, have a fraction of the capacity being used in terms of students. And they've got students leaving the system. And apparently it's not because of the buildings.
Buildings don't educate, systems educate, right?
Yeah.
And so you can build a big, beautiful building so that when taxpayers drive by, they go, oh, isn't that a wonderful high school? Look at how beautiful that is. Problem is they don't know what's going on inside, and what's going on inside is DEI and activism. They're not learning about Martin Luther King Jr. They're not learning about Charlie Kirk. They're learning how to be an activist, and they're learning how to have sex 7 different ways with 6 different people, and not learning about history, not learning math, not learning skills that they're going to need in real life. And so the buildings don't educate. And I've been against big buildings and so forth. I mean, they're nice, but what you do create is somewhat of an entitlement. And what's sad is a lot of those kids that go to those big, beautiful buildings to go to school, those buildings are way better than the homes that they live in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so now the big, beautiful buildings in the community aren't your churches. They aren't your commercial centers. They're government buildings.
And they're better than many of the buildings that many of the businesses who are being relied upon to generate the incomes and the revenue to pay for all this stuff are in. And now they've got the problem that those businesses are leaving. And actually, because of what happened during COVID, many parents found out what was going on in those classrooms. And they're like, I'm out of here. And they're not acting like they have to attract students in order to justify what they're doing anymore. So no wonder we spend gobs of money and get terrible results. I know that the businesses leaving is becoming a big problem. I actually did a cursory review of some headlines.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
It lines up with what you sent out a newsletter about when we talked about last time you're on. CNBC ranks Oregon amongst the most expensive states. Housing was the chief reason. Energy costs is another. Oregon among states with highest.
Oh, and on that fact, we're going to raise gas taxes. So don't worry, we got that covered.
We'll fix that. Here's 6 more.
Fix that by raising gas taxes, and DMV fees and payroll taxes. We'll help the affordability problem. Don't worry, we got that.
And by the way, we won't deliver on the transportation that we say we're going to give, because actually that's our track record. I just saw a headline that I-5 is the whole idea of the I-5 bridge, which has been going on. It used to be the Columbia River crossing and all kinds of stuff like that. The replacement is slogging through permitting now.
Yes,
and the price has gone from where it was a couple billion a few years ago to $5 billion, now $7.5 billion. And they say it could reach as much as $10 billion because costs have escalated 30% on transportation projects in Seattle and Portland regions in recent years. So that means that they're gonna fall well short of what they need to build the thing that they said they would build in order to justify all the taxes. And now the businesses are leaving that will be relied upon to pay for it. And the latest one I just saw, there's one or two of these every week, major employers in the state. Edwards Vacuum is laying off 128 workers in Oregon.
And Washington County. Yeah.
It's in Hillsborough.
Hillsborough. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the only reason why we know these is because the larger employers are required by law to, it's called the warn notice, that they have to go and
Mhm.
tell that they're going to be laying off some people. But Nike has been doing it. Intel has been doing it. A Daimler in Portland, Dutch
Portland.
Brothers is leaving, moving their headquarters out.
Yeah.
And I hear absolutely nothing from our governor about what she's going to do to deal with this crisis, because the latest news is mass layoffs in Oregon are approaching Great Recession levels. We're among the states with the highest unemployment increases in the country, and we're one of the worst states to move to. One of the worst states to do business. I'm just reading headlines from like the
Yeah.
past month.
This is a Kevin saying this. Is Kevin reading the media, which is left leaning, saying this?
Yeah, and none of these media outlets are campaigning for Republicans here.
No.
No, no, these are just them, saying, "Oops, I guess we have to tell the truth." It is
Right.
not good right now.
No. It's
Why doesn't the governor talk about this? She's got an
right.
emergency for everything. Everything's an emergency, but this isn't.
Yeah. I think the Democrats are concerned always about how much money the government is getting, and are concerned about employing government workers and making sure that they get raises and that their pensions are okay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Forgetting that the government exists not for those things. The government exists to serve the people. And
Yeah,
so the serve the people thing is, frankly, we've had a Democrat governor for 40 years. We've had a Democrat led legislature for 20 years. So why would they think any different? They can get away with anything. And guess what? The people are not smart enough to put the pieces together and say, oh, it's those guys that are causing this problem. Those that have figured it out, I think, have just packed their bags and left.
yeah,
We hope that there are enough left to vote in 26 and put a different governor in power and put a different legislature in power. And I think we can turn this around really quick, but time is running out. We need to do it now. We can't wait 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years. But this isn't hard, but it does take courage, because the last thing a politician likes to do is say no to a government worker, no to a department head. We're going to have to cut. No, they don't like to say that. What they like to say is, okay, you need money, I'll go find you some money. And then they go out and cry about all the bad things. They implement political blackmail. We're not going to be able to paint the lines. We're not going to be able to plow the roads. We're not going to be able to fix the roads. We can't do anything. We won't be able to finish these projects unless we get more money from you. Instead of saying, okay, how about if we close the DEI department inside of ODOT? How about if we close the climate change group within ODOT? How about if we take the transit taxes that are dedicated to transit taxes that we didn't have before 2017 and apply that to road maintenance? How about if we don't raise taxes and we just do those 3 things? What do we look like? Oh, gee, we can run ODOT and we don't need to raise your taxes. Matter of fact, we can probably lower your taxes.
Well, and this headline, I talked to Representative Osborne yesterday about it, just blew me away. It was the Eugene Register Guard said Governor Tina Kotek, it's from last week, Governor Tina Kotek directs Oregon state agencies to begin cost-saving measures.
Yep.
Now, she was doing it in the context of the effect of on taxable income that Oregon connects to the federal tax code, and therefore the federal tax breaks are going to cause Oregon to have
it's over $800 million a biennium that if we stay connected, the state will lose.
Yes.
So
and only now does she say, does she direct the state agencies to begin cost saving measures? How about you do that the first
how about when
day,
she started
like when
being governor back in 2022? She said that, right? In 2023, why didn't she say, let's do cost saving measures? Apparently that wasn't important because the money was just rolling in. So why change anything? But now that they're threatened with this, and I'm hearing whispers that the Democrats want to disconnect from the tax code, federal tax code. So the tax on tips, full bonus depreciation for businesses, tax on overtime, and there's a few other provisions in there. They want to disconnect from that so that the state can keep its $800 some million that they've estimated they need. The thing is that money just doesn't not come to the government. It stays with people, and people spend it, they invest it, or they save it. All those things spur on the economy, which generates higher income for businesses, which then comes in as higher tax receipts for the government. But they don't calculate it that way. They just look at, oh, we're going to lose X, ergo, we need to go get that money.
Well, but you just mentioned tips, overtime, Social Security. Those are just billionaires that are benefiting from those breaks, and so
yes,
the Democrats.
I'm pretty sure Phil Knight works for tips.
Yeah, yeah, tips and overtime, exactly.
I'm sure he does overtime too. Yeah, exactly.
He waits for that Social Security check to show up, and
That's right.
he's going to take a big hit on that one. No, this is the thing: is like they will literally say anything to get revenue, but they'll literally do nothing to save money or to make sure that the economy is healthy enough to generate more revenue. And it is a doom loop approach.
These tax cuts are a godsend to save our economy. And Democrats are going to say, nope, we need that money now. We can't give that up. We need it more than you need it. That's what they're saying. We need it more government than you need it to pay your mortgage, that you need it to fill your gas tank, that you need to pay your electric bills, that you need to buy clothes for your children for school or food, and etc. We need it more than you do. That's what they're saying. And so in 26, it's going to be up to Oregonians to say, nope, we think you're wrong. We're going to put some other people in charge.
I sure would like to see them try to put a tax that ends up getting referred to the ballot. That's the DEI tax. Because if people knew how much they're paying for DEI or how much they're paying for subsidizing green energy or how much they're paying, to continue funding programs that have failed to deliver any results, whether they be transportation or others. If these were the names of the taxes, there's no way they would pass.
No. And this is why I say we don't need to raise taxes, and we actually could lower taxes and do far better, because I get a front row seat. I've had a front row seat now for 9 years watching this organization called the State of Oregon spend money. And I can guarantee you, we spend billions of dollars in ways that you would find unfathomable and worthless and have no return on investment. And yet we continue to do it over and over again, because why change? Democrats continue to get elected.
Yeah. And I will say that voters might be rethinking their prior tendency to vote for tax increases on levies and things like that. I think that's all going to shift now, because it was great until you ran out of other people's money to pay for all of this stuff, and suddenly you're getting hit with the taxes.
Socialism promises utopia but delivers despair. It always does. That's the equality that you get out of socialism, is despair. Everyone is equally miserable.
Yep. Well, and I did want to mention, touch briefly on the issue of the special session and what's happening now, just so folks know or can anticipate what's going to go on. And of course, this idea of disconnecting from the federal tax code, is this going to be legislative action that we're going to see?
It would require legislative action. Yes, it would. Whether it happens in this special session or not, I'm watching closely, because there's nothing to prevent Democrats from sliding that in at the last minute. There's just nothing that prevents them from doing that. So we're watching it closely. I think as far as special session next Monday, the Senate will convene, and they're scheduled to vote on House Bill 3991, which is and 3992. One is the spending appropriation and one is the tax bill, and then adjourn on Monday. But that is only if Senator Gorsuch shows up, or I guess 18 Democrats show up, because it doesn't matter whether Republicans show up except for to provide quorum. So we shall see whether that happens or not. Last time they said it was going to be on September 17th, and then they had to backpedal. Uh, as I'm reading the tea leaves and talking to folks in Salem and around Salem, it sounds like they're making plans for that to happen by shifting committees around on the Senate side so that they can actually have a floor session. But I've seen them do that too, and then say, "Oh, wait a second, nope, we can't do it." So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Keep your eyes peeled. Well, I mean, and there's so many other great topics that we could touch upon. I always love having you on the show, and all of our viewers and super fans do too. And I think, and we'll have you on again in the not too distant future to talk about, especially where we're heading in 2026, because
Yeah.
we're getting close to it, and we're starting to see it a little bit more clearly. And I know it's gonna be a political year, but
Yeah.
my gut feeling is it's not turning out the way the Democrats had it planned.
No, and I think it's going to be up to all of us to carry the mantle of Charlie Kirk and to be bold and to be respectful, but be bold and proclaim the truth of things. And I know I saw in the comments here about ending vote by mail. That's a ballot initiative, and they're looking for signatures. So I think it's nvbm.com or .org or something like that. Go there and download a petition and sign it and help us get that on the ballot. That would be absolutely great. I've always said that I would be willing to make a state holiday for election day, right? No government. You just make it a state holiday and let's go vote. One day, paper ballots, count them, be done by 11, right? At worst. Yep. Instead of it carrying on for days and days and allowing 7 days for ballots to show up and. So it's all the monkey business that we allow to happen. So I think that in person, unless you have an excuse, a legitimate excuse, you're disabled or you're an invalid or you're out of town and you know you're going to be out of town, fine. But everybody else, let's show up at the polls. Let's be a community once again. Let's vote in person. Let's show valid ID, and let's get this done.
Well, that's a great way to wrap up the show tonight, because that's 2026 and that's ahead of us. But thanks again for taking the time to join us. And how can folks make sure that they get information and follow you?
Sure, they can go a couple places. One is the Oregon Legislative website, and you can look up my name Reschke and find me there under one of the House members. I keep a pretty active newsletter going. You can also go to Werner for Oregon, WERNER Oregon.com. There I do a lot of blogging, and again, you'll see a lot of my writing. I'm on Instagram, although you'll probably see a lot of my puppy rather than political statements, although sometimes I put stuff there. And then on X, Werner Reschke, at Werner Reschke is on X, and follow me there. And I'm usually making comments and hopefully intelligent comments, but trying to add to the discussion about why conservative values should win the day.
Thank you so much. Everybody check those websites out and social media, and we look forward to having you on again here, Representative Reschke.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
And thanks, everyone, for watching. Please share the show with everyone you can, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience.